282-2882, the email address, lrushmore@eibnet.com. Gallup has just released the following. Democrat voting enthusiasm down sharply from 2004 and 2008. So, and I have the details here in just a second, it further exposes the NBC Wall Street Journal poll as a corrupt, bogus piece of work. Republicans are more enthusiastic than in 2008. Democrats are significantly less likely now to vote. Less likely than they were in the summers of 2004 and 2008 to say they're more enthusiastic about voting than usual. Republicans more enthusiastic now than in 2008, the same as they were in 2004. The point is Obama's attempted voter suppression is not working. This is from the Gallup USA Today poll that came out yesterday. Gallup is just now getting around to putting out this aspect of the results today. And the results are based on the July 19th or 22nd USA Today Gallup poll, and they suggest a shift in Republican and Democrat orientation to voting in the upcoming presidential election compared with the last two, with Republicans expressing more voting enthusiasm. Currently 51 to 39% Republican advantage in voter enthusiasm is larger than the 53-45 Republican advantage Gallup measured in February of this year. So the NBC poll says that Democrat voter enthusiasm is way up, as indicated by their sample. 11% more Democrats turning out to vote than Republicans. That's what that plus 11 meant in the NBC Journal poll. They gave the Democrats a plus 11 advantage in terms of number of respondents in the poll based on what they think the turnout is going to be. Gallup goes on to say that Republicans' greater enthusiasm about voting is a troubling sign for the Obama campaign, especially given the fact that registered voters are essentially tied in their presidential voting preferences and that Republicans historically vote at a higher rate than Democrats do. If that last part is true, why does Gallup oversample the Democrats? This doesn't make any sense. Unless they're trying to suppress Republican vote, which we know they are, and they're trying to goose or inspire Democrat vote. So if it's true that Republicans have greater enthusiasm about voting, and that's a troubling sign for Obama, why in the world did NBC, Wall Street Journal, and every other polling outfit oversample Democrats so much? And it's because they're using their poll to make news, not reflect public opinion. They're trying to create public opinion, trying to bend it and shape it. But the big news here is that Obama's effort to suppress the vote isn't working. And in Gallup's own release, the headline, Democrat voting enthusiasm down sharply from 2004 and 2008. Democrats now significantly less likely, 39%. Than they were in the summers of 2004, 2008 to say that they are more enthusiastic about voting than usual. This is why I always trust my instincts. I see an NBC Wall Street Journal poll or any poll that comes out that shows the Democrats with a plus 11. There's no way that you can't even make that case. Even if it were true, it's not reflected anywhere. Even in the way they're reporting the news. It's not reflected in the way Obama's behaving. It's not reflected in the way the Democrats are behaving and the way they're talking. And guess what? F. Chuck Todd, NBC News, has just admitted, quote, our poll was skewed. Okay, now it's time for audio soundbite number one. I like Brian Williams, even though Brian Williams, this is so tough. You remember when Brian Williams had that 9 o'clock show at MSNBC? Back when MSNBC was a responsible place. I was a guest on that. I was a guest on Chris Matthews' show now and then. We'd go over there to Secaucus or wherever it was, Fort Lee, and we'd hang around, and I remember laughing with Matthews about stuff, and always commiserating with him. His ratings were always much lower than I thought his actual audience was, and I'd tell him that. We go back to Brian Williams' office. Is he getting ready for his 9 o'clock show? And one of the funniest guys in the world. Now, these guys have just become totally infected with full-fledged partisanship. And they're angry all the time. I don't know about Brian, but they're angry and they're at war every day. So here, last night on the NBC Nightly News, here's Brian Williams with F. Chuck Todd as they trumpet their poll.
Our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll debuting here tonight has some eye-opening findings about the way this campaign is being run and the effect it's having on both sides. Our political director, Chief White House correspondent Chuck Todd with the numbers. Chuck, good evening.
This campaign in the month of July has taken an especially nasty turn, and perhaps it was only a matter of time that voters would express their frustration. That's the biggest takeaway from our new NBC Wall Street Journal poll. While the fundamentals of the overall race haven't changed that much, the president still leads 49-43 in this survey. It's the negative campaign that has taken a toll on how voters view both the president and Mitt Romney.
That's just out the window now. The Gallup poll is out, and NBC News' poll is an outlier. It's the only one. Well, now they're joined by Reuters. You only got two of them that show Obama in the lead, both of them incidentally by 6 points. Both of them show enthusiasm down in the negative ads working. They're not working. Chuck Todd admitted it was on Scarborough's show this morning. Our poll was skewed. So I wanted to play the way they introed the poll last night on Nightly News. And now, they even in their web release of the poll, the headline was "A lot of bad news for Romney, Obama in latest poll." This is the poll that oversampled Democrats by 11 points. But again, Gallup is just out now with the exact opposite information. The Republican voter enthusiasm is off the charts. Higher than 2004, higher than 2008. The effort to suppress isn't working. The bad news for Romney is not bad news. There isn't the bad news for Romney in the Gallup survey that NBC claims is in theirs. Now, I want to go back, close the loop here on our discussion of health care. And the various CBO reports and the confusing numbers. And I want to go back to the Hill.com report specifically. They said in that story the Supreme Court ruling will lower Obamacare costs. And their headline in that story is incorrect. Supreme Court decision cuts cost of health care reform by $84 billion. The headline's false. Here's why. The ruling reduces the scope of Obamacare. The costs to taxpayers fall because there's going to be less Obamacare. Meaning the states can opt out. They don't have to spend. There's going to be less. There'll be less people covered, fewer people covered, so there's going to be less Obamacare. Now, this contradicts the claim of the regime that Obamacare was going to reduce costs. Reducing Obamacare is what reduces costs, not Obamacare. This is where the Hill gets their headline wrong. If you look at the details of their story, what they're essentially saying is that the cost to taxpayers is falling because there's going to be less Obamacare. There's going to be less health care. I'm sorry for not catching that. It was right in front of my face. And I was too focused on all the different stories, the different numbers, the different interpretations. The bottom line is, to whatever extent costs are falling, it's because there's less Obamacare. It's not because of the Supreme Court ruling. It's not because Obamacare is reducing costs. It's because less Obamacare, fewer people being covered. Medicare is what's reducing the costs. All right, let me. I make a programming format decision here. take a break. Come back. Get to the audio sound bites. I've got a little revisit here of Obama, and you didn't build it. You didn't make that happen. Because we're not going to let that go away. And Obama's now got an ad out. And I think all this is really getting under his skin, folks. He's got an ad out now whining and moaning at people take him out of context. He's out there saying people that do what he does for a living, you have to expect people to make things up about you, and you have to expect people to lie about you, and you have to expect that kind of criticism. That's part of doing a job. But this, he's not going to put up with. This kind of misrepresentation and taking him out of context. So this is getting under his skin. And since we know it, and even if it weren't, we would keep focus on it because this is who he is. So we'll take a break. We'll come back, do the latest chapter of all this when we return.